I guess the real question is, should he? Does it really matter? I don't think it matters. Whoever he picks, people are going to lose their minds. So do I think he's going to pick Kellyanne Conway? No, I don't. He's going to pick someone who is qualified for the job, whether you like them or not. This is just more proof of the old adage that elections have consequences. For instance, the 2000 election, Bush versus Gore. The far lefties were telling everybody that Bush and Gore were essentially the same. There's no difference between the two. So they ran what was essentially a joke candidate, Ralph Nader. But it turned out the joke was on them because their candidate won 97,000 votes in Florida. Votes that otherwise would have gone to Al Gore. And of course, Gore lost Florida by just a few hundred votes. And by losing Florida, he lost the presidency. And that meant that when two Supreme Court justices needed to be replaced, the replacements were picked by the conservative George W. Bush and not the liberal Al Gore. And of course, if the two conservative judges had been replaced by two more liberal justices, the United States would be a very different country right now. So that one election has had a massive influence on the path our country has taken over the past 20 years. Also, you may be curious as to why so many liberals are so angry at Ruth Bader Ginsburg for not retiring before the year 2014. Why not the year 2016? That's when the big presidential election was. It's because in the 2014 midterm elections, the Democrats lost the Senate. And that came back to bite them real hard because 2 years later when Justice Scalia died, the now Republican-controlled Senate would not allow Barack Obama to replace the very conservative Scalia with a liberal. And that brings us up to the 2016 election. Since I know you can't really trust the media on either side, I'll try reading both sides. I'll read the New York Times, but I'll also read the National Review. I'll read Slate, but I'll also read Breitbart. So I was pretty familiar with arguments going on both sides. In 2016, the Hillary people were begging the Bernie bros to please support Hillary. Put aside your dislike of her and vote for her because we need to replace Scalia with a liberal judge. But the Bernie bros were not having it at all. If you brought up the subject, they would lose their minds and say things like, "You can't hold that over me. The Supreme Court's not that important." And of course that old chestnut of, we'll just pack the court when we get power back. And apparently they really believe that because a lot of them ended up voting for Trump out of spite. Meanwhile, the Republicans were arguing that you needed to vote for Trump, whether you liked him or not, to ensure that the Supreme Court stayed in conservative hands. And unlike the far lefties, Republicans understood how important it was to keep control of the Supreme Court. And now we'll get to see if the far lefties learned their lesson or if the Republicans will be able to use that argument to their advantage again. And this is what they mean by elections have consequences. Even if you don't like your party's candidate, that person can have a massive influence on the rest of your life. For instance, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is an icon on the left, lionized and idolized, and they love her to death. But they somehow seem to forget that it was Bill Clinton that appointed her to the Supreme Court. And the only person lefties hate more than Bill Clinton is Hillary Clinton. But right about now, I bet these people are really wishing they could have held their noses and voted for Hillary back in 2016. And finally, while I know Trump is definitely going to nominate somebody, I'm not sure he'll be able to find enough votes in the Senate to actually confirm them. Remember, most politicians are cowards, and those running for re-election this year will probably come up with some reason to put off the vote until after the election.